What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip, and welcome back to another video. So, now, I would like to review Kamen Rider Beyond Generations. And before I begin, I would like to remind everyone that even though this film has been out for months already, I understand that not everyone has seen it yet, so I would like you to go watch it first before going back to this video, because in order to discuss some details as much as possible, I probably will have to mention some spoilers. So, with that said, please again watch the movie first and then watch this video afterwards. Okay? So, otherwise, enjoy. Now, let me summarize the movie as best as I can. So, we have a character named Ryunosuke Momose who travels back in time to 2021 from the year 2071. So, in that timeline, the world apparently has been overrun by demons and the surviving humans have been enslaved. So, Ryunosuke, running away from these demons, is saved by an old man who turns out to be George Karizaki. So George gives Ryunosuke a driver or a belt called the Cyclotron driver and instructs Ryunosuke to use it and go back in time. However, the thing is, the Cyclotron driver can only send back Ryunosuke's consciousness, but not his body. So he does travel back in time to 2021. So in 2021, George, or at least before he traveled back in time, so George also instructed Ryunosuke to find his son Hideo. Because in order to unlock the true potential of the cyclotron driver, Ryunosuke needs to find someone with the same genetic makeup as him. Because again, Ryunosuke doesn't have his body, only his consciousness back in 2021. And despite being, you know, able to be seen and he's able to talk to other people, he cannot physically interact with them. So basically, he needs his son in order to transform into Kamen Rider Century. So Kamen Rider Century is a Kamen Rider created by George in order to defeat a demon called Diablo, which is said to be as powerful as Gif. Now, meanwhile, so the Deadmans do find this vice stamp or stamp that contains Diablo and revives him. Diablo also revives or uses the power of what are called CRISPR stamps, which interestingly, instead of animal DNA contained inside, they have DNA of famous people. So, namely, Leonidas, Himiko from Japanese history. Uh, you also have Tutankhamun and Thomas Edison. Yeah. So he does revive these CRISPR stamps and uses them as his minions. So in order to rule the world. And of course, the Kamen Riders try to stop him. So Hideo, so going back to Ryunosuke and Hideo, sorry. So apparently, so Ryunosuke is or was a shocker scientist back in 1971. So how was he from the future? So apparently, so when he defected from Shocker, he was caught and his body was used as a host for Diablo. So a stamp, so the Diablo stamp was used on Ryunosuke's body, and then Diablo came out. So with that, Ryunosuke was deemed useless and was sent to space, where he probably was sent to die. However, what happens is a wormhole sucked him and apparently threw him far into the future by 100 years, And this is how we ended up in the year 2071. So apparently George knew about Yunosuke, and this is how, or this is why he was given the cyclotron driver. So meanwhile, back on Earth, or back rather in 2021, so the Kamen Riders of Kamen Rider Saber and Kamen Rider Revice work together in order to stop Diablo's revival, which kind of fails. And while the other minions or the other demons revived by Diablo, they were eventually defeated, of course, but in the end, Diablo still was able to amass enough power in order to uh, basically fully revive himself. However, eventually, of course, our heroes defeat him. Uh, Ryunosuke and Hideo come to an understanding, and well, of course, everything is well in the end. So that's as short as I can put this summary without making this video too long. So let's go into the details. Now, of course, we have Kamen Rider Sentry. Now, I think Kamen Rider Sentry's suit is okay. So it does come into variants. So when Yunosuke and Hideo first transform into Kamen Rider Sentry, so apparently this is an incomplete form. And uh, after the first battle, so Kamen Rider Sentry goes berserk and uh, revives with the help of Saber and Blades. So they were able to stop or subdue Kamen Rider Sentry and split Ryunosuke and Hideo. So the reason why this form is incomplete and berserk is that uh, Ryunosuke forced the transformation, so he used Hideo's body without consent. So of course, we have this family drama between them, and with that resolved, so eventually, of course, Hideo agrees to fight alongside his father, and this is when Kamen Rider Century becomes completed. So the differences between these two suits is that in the incomplete mode, so there's no clear cover on the face and the chest, and the eyes are not that glowing pink, but yeah, rather again like metallic. So in the completed form, so we do see like a more covered face and chest, again with the more obvious rider eyes. So in terms of power, we don't really see stats on Kamen Rider Sentry. I hope I can find some information in the future, but yeah, I'm not really sure how strong he is compared to the other riders, but it's basically the only rider that can stand up to Diablo, which is why George mentions it. So, in order to defeat Diablo, Kamen Rider Sentry was created. Now, in terms of abilities, so Sentry has an interesting way of using his powers. So he is able to create like circular saw blades that are made of pure energy, and he uses them to create to either like perform a rider punch, of course a rider kick, or he can simply just throw those gigantic energy saw blades onto the enemy for a projectile attack, I guess, for a long range attack. So other than that, he doesn't have any weapons, and he does have the ability to somehow time travel by sending people's consciousness, to the past or to the future, depending on how it's used. So this kind of happens at least in the incomplete form. So what happens is, uh, of course, in the middle of the movie, so some of the riders were sent to the future, and after that, so when Kamen Rider Century was completed in his more complete form, so he was able to transport not only the consciousness but also the bodies of the people that he transported earlier. So who did Kamen Rider Century transport into the future? So we have Toma, Rintaro, Vice, and Vice, Daiji, Sakura, and Yuri. So three riders from Kamen Rider Saber and three Revice riders, of course. So he transports them into the future by consciousness only, and then when he brings them back to 2021, not only are their consciousnesses back, but also their bodies were transported to where the final battle takes place. So I guess that's more possible with the completed century. So now on to some other aspects. So when I mentioned the Toma and the other riders who are transported into the future, so they are made to fight. Or of course they were there to protect uh, Ryunosuke's body and probably defeat some demons in the future as well. However, because they don't have their bodies, so they don't have the ability to transform. I guess even Vice and Yuri, they cannot transform into their rider forms. However, George had a plan, and that is to use the clone rider system, which allowed which allowed the six of them to transform into any common rider with common rider forms actually. So, in any form that they want. Let's say Yuri, for example. So, not only did he transform into Kamen Rider Exade, but he actually simply just transformed into Muteki Gamer. And Rintaro, the absolute mad lads at Toei, actually allowed him to transform into Kamen Rider Blade. Not Blades, Blade. The singular blade without an S. Kenzaki is proud of him, I'm sure. Absolute mad lads. So, of course, the other riders like Toma, for example, he transforms into Kamen Rider Axel. He transforms into Kamen Rider Ichigo. Actually, Sakura transformed into female riders, so such as Valkyrie and Poppy. I forgot the others, what they transformed into, but yeah, so this kind of explains the appearance of the other riders. And apparently, in the future, there are also demon riders who appear like villainous common riders, actually, like you see Oja, Eternal, and the Sorcerer, but they're actually demons. So, uh, the thing is, the clone riders apparently are weak. You know, let's take, for example, I think who should have been the most powerful was Yuri when he transformed into Muteki Gamer, but apparently this Muteki Gamer form or this Muteki Gamer that he transformed into isn't powerful at all. So I guess they were just there to buy time in order to uh, kind of complete Kamen Rider Century. So that part of the movie will well you do have like an epic moment with Rintaro transforming into Kamen Rider Blade, sure, but how the clone riders were handled, not good, not good. So they were they were kind of easily beaten. So again, they were just there to buy time, while the others who were left in 2021, mostly the common riders from Kamen Rider Saber. So they were the ones who were taking care of the CRISPR demons, such as Edison. So uh, that one went kind of okay. So of course, they were able to defeat those demons. So I'm not sure why the clone riders were that weak, but of course, when they were taken back into the past or into the year 2021, so George apparently was able to send a vice stamp, right? So now let's talk about this. So if you notice, right, Kamen Rider Beyond Generations, we do see both Revi and Saber, but not Zero One. Actually, come to think of it, there have been no appearances from any actor in Kamen Rider Zero One from the Zero One franchise or the Zero One series, because I'm not sure why, but nonetheless, they couldn't even get Fumiya Takahashi, who was, of course, Aruto, aka Kamen Rider Zero One. Maybe because he has been busy. Now, if it was the case, it's understandable, I guess. So maybe instead of having any kind of or any actor from the Zero One franchise appear in Beyond Generations, I think they decided to just use Kamen Rider Zero One and turn him into the Neo Bata Vice Stamp, which of course made its debut in that movie and will appear later in the TV series. So uh, yeah, this is actually used in the final battle against no. So they were used in the final, or it was used in the final battle against Diablo. Now, Kamen Rider uh, Revi and Vice in their Neobata Vice stamp form, or yeah, in Neobata genome, uh, the form actually looks okay for uh, Revi. So he does look like Zero One, and Vice, interestingly, looks more like a grasshopper, but the color scheme is kind of like Zero One anyway. And well, I do not like, honestly, the remix form, but I guess it's what made sense. They turn into a grasshopper, but you know, uh, that's how Toei and Bandai did it. But nonetheless, meh, I guess. So, uh, overall, what do you think of this movie? Now, it was okay. The I think there was more focus rather on the Momose family. I think they were the real protagonists of the movie. I think we can all agree with that. If you've watched the movie, of course. So the Momose family, again, they have their family thing because uh, again, it turns out, so Yunosuke was a shocker scientist, right? So he had his promise to his young son, to a young Hideo, that they would go on the Shinkansen, because apparently during that time, so the Shinkansen began its operations, and I guess the Shinkansen was quite a recurring theme in the movie, given that Hideo worked at is working as a as an engineer that basically handles the repair and maintenance of Shinkansen trains. Maybe because of that, childhood experience. But I guess this memory is what kept them together. I guess. Mm, Now, the forms in the movie, well, I don't really have much to say. Like, it was fine. The action is fine. The monsters are okay. If I say so, the like the crisper demons, they are basically uh, inspired by Kamen Rider Ghost. Like, I'm not sure if there was a Leonidas icon or a Leonidas Tamashi, but definitely we do know that Himiko, Edison, and Tutankhamun were like icons that appeared in Kamen Rider Ghost. And it was nice seeing, them portrayed as monsters. But that's the movie for you. Now, overall, was Kamen Rider Beyond Generations a good movie? Like, it was okay. It was entertaining. The theme song I really dig. So, Dice's Promise really was nice. Like, uh, it's a song about like how we are connected. Like, being connected with your loved ones, no matter how far you are, even if you are separated by time, perhaps, that's okay. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention this part. So, Kamen Rider Ichigo does appear in the movie, right? So, of course, we cannot get Hiroshi Fujioka, but this is where his son Maito comes in. So, because we do travel back to 1971, which is when, of course, Takeshi Hongo became Kamen Rider. So basically, Maito revives his father's old role by portraying a younger Takeshi Hongo. Although personally, I do think Maito looks too young. Well, he does kind of nail uh, like the acts, or the not really accent, but like how Takeshi speaks, and action wise, like his action scenes are really good. Again, uh, this is just me, but Maito simply was just too young to portray a 25-year-old Takeshi Hongo, because at 25, like Hiroshi Fujioka was really like, like a grown man, but Maito is still a teenager basically, so he's not fully manly yet, I guess. But nonetheless, he handled the action pretty nicely, and it does kind of circumvent this notion of like Toei being anti nepotism, which means that, you know, children of past actors can become Kamen Riders too. So we could probably talk about that in a future video if you like, but nonetheless, so he does circumvent this nepotism thing by actually just by simply inheriting, his father's role. And who knows, maybe in future movies at least, we can see Maito Fujioka reprising uh, Takeshi Hongo, so he could appear as Takeshi Hongo in future movies going forward. But yeah, I think it's okay. I don't mind this kind of system really. So yeah, sorry if I got sidetracked really. But overall, what do I think of Kamen Rider Beyond Generations? It's a 3.5 out of 5 for me. Like, again, it's not really that amazing, so to speak. Like, again, when especially with the part, of the in the future where uh, Toma and the other riders that went with him to the future, so they fought as clone riders. That one was handled poorly. Like, they were just, useless against the enemies. So George, you could have done better with the Clone Riders, really, if you really wanted to. Especially with the Muteki Gamer. It was supposed to be one of the more powerful final forms. How come it was weak? I think that's my major complaint about this movie. But overall, it was nice. So I'm sorry if I had a lot of thoughts going on, uh, and my review is kind of a mess, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video anyway, and if you did, please do leave a thumbs up, please do leave a like, comment, share this video, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. This has been Philip, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.